Well, good afternoon, and it's great to be here, and thank you for having me here, Andy, and appreciate the kind words. We've had really a tremendous set of speakers and panels today, and on behalf of MSC and all of us there, and we'd like to thank the NDTA and Christopher Newport University. My daughter's an alumni of CNU, and I tell you what, she graduated, I guess, 2012, and I came back here. It's been a while. Pretty tremendous places, and I know they've got some tremendous capability in their teachers and professors here, and I know she's pretty proud of it. I'm pretty damn proud of how much of my tuition dollars went to build some of it too. So it took care of that HVAC that somebody else was worried about. So I appreciate the opportunity to kind of wrap up this afternoon and share some of our perspectives at MSC on the importance of our ports, and its particular importance to us as we think through the broader logistics enterprise as our responsibility as component commander, naval component commander to Transcom. And you're going to hear some familiar themes, and I'll try to not repeat too much, but it does, I think, kind of wrap up today with representing the alignment across a lot of folks here with some similar challenges. And I'm keenly aware that we're close to the cocktail hour here, so I'll try to keep myself on track here. Conferences, especially with NDTA, always sparks some good conversations, some good thinking. But this one, for me and for Admiral Mewborn, really gives us even more to think about as we and the staff at MSC, each and every day, we're thinking about our decisions and our support that we have to provide to our ships through the ports across the globe in order that they can get underway, our crews can get underway and execute mission. And typically our captains and chief engineers really don't want a whole lot of help from headquarters at sea, but of course there's a lot more to it when they come into port. And so I thank you for all you gathered here to help in that support. And I want to provide, just kind of start out with a little bit of historical context here, because it's the end of the day, so let me lighten it up a little bit here. And many of you will probably recognize this picture. The challenges we're talking about today were not that much different, it sounds like, 100 years ago, when the Great White Fleet sailed here, right here from Hampton Roads, on a world tour to test naval readiness, build goodwill, and establish our global presence really for the first time as a Navy. 16 battleships, 14,000 men, embarked on a voyage that steamed 43,000 miles and made 26 port calls on 6 continents before returning home 14 months later, almost a year ago, or 100 years ago, to just a couple months ago, 100 years ago. And in a day and age when we had very limited capability to replenish our ships at sea, it demonstrated the criticality, this cruise demonstrated the criticality of maintaining and sustaining our ships from yards and coaling stations in ports like Puget Sound and San Francisco, Manila, Gibraltar, and among many others. And as all of us here appreciate already, since the Great White Fleet and before, America's defense has critically been tied to America's ports, and this port of Hampton Roads in particular. And I've been, I'm partial to my Navy roots, but I've been sitting through here, and I think we can all appreciate how much even greater appreciation today on the vitality of ports, not just to the Navy, which I've taken for granted for a long time in my career, but to all of our sister services. And just down the road from here, for instance, in Newport News, this historical marker marks the spot of Camp Patrick Henry, the U.S. Army's Transportation Corps headquarters for the Hampton Roads Port of Embarkation, the third largest port during World War II, after San Francisco and New York City. And over a 3-year period, Hampton Roads serviced over 4,000 ship visits and provided transport for nearly 2 million people and over 12 million tons of cargo, supporting the buildup of our forces in Europe and the invasions of Africa and Sicily and Italy. So today, fast forward, we've come a long way since the Great White Fleet, especially in our ability to conduct sustained operations at sea. But just as then, our nation's ports, piers, and yards remain crucial to our success. And here you see the Abe Lincoln just getting underway, departing Norfolk 2 weeks ago for their deployment. Abe and 5 ships of the Carrier Strike Group were all provisioned, fueled, and armed by the port and people of Hampton Roads and the broader network of the infrastructure and transportation nodes and modes that serve this great port. As the Abe was rolling out and transiting the Atlantic, motor vessel Freedom, a heavy lift roll-on, roll-off ship chartered by MSC, was arriving at its port in Beaumont, discharging cargo for the 1st Cavalry Division. At the same time, we had a MARAD RRF ship, the motor vessel Cape Orlando, arrive in Anchorage and loaded 12 helicopters for delivery to Hawaii. And the USNS Button, William Button, what you see up here on the upper left, one of our 4 deployed pre-positioning ships, America's 911 force for Sealift, discharged U.S. Marine Corps cargo at Port Wenebe and then conducted a ammunition rotation before heading back to the Pacific. So recounting these historical examples in our current operations kind of underscore what many of our speakers and our panel members have already said today about the vital role that logistics plays in executing our national military strategy and a responsibility to ensure our soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen forward deployed have what they need to get their jobs done. So ports are they're the critical nodes, obviously, to their success. Whether it's a transshipment point for people and cargo like it was back in Camp Patrick Henry, whether it's conducting maintenance and repair for our ships, helping house and train our crews, and of course supplying provisions and fuel. And we in the Navy, and I'll speak again from my roots in the Navy, we don't often think enough about that when discussing military strategy and operational logistics. And so the discussions this week really are a helpful focus for us on opportunities to improve effective and efficient support for our operations at sea. That's especially true when we consider the current and future operating environment, the contested environment that Pete Clark mentioned earlier today, that all of us who support the nation's defense have got to contend with and be prepared for, especially, I'd argue, in the maritime domain. I'll talk about that a little bit more, but I thought it would be helpful for some of you who may not know what MSC is doing and what our mission is. I want to give some context to that of our ships and crews that comprise our force. Our mission is pretty clear from the Navy and from General Lines and Transportation Command. We provide the Navy and the Joint Force with on-time logistics, strategic sealift, and specialized missions anywhere in the world, under every operating environment imaginable. And as General Broadmeadow mentioned at lunch today, it is part of the force that sets America, the United States, apart from every other military power in our ability to self-deploy and sustain combat operations in every corner of the globe. We're a component of the larger Navy, the broader global type commander, providing support to U.S. Fleet Forces Command and U.S. Pacific Fleet, and the forward deployed numbered fleets, and of course for the Naval Component Command to U.S. Transportation Command. We are responsible for manning, training, and equipping and operating about 140 ships on any given day, all crewed by civilian mariners, either federally employed or those working for commercial operating companies under contract with MSC. And so if we were a business, we'd be the largest shipping company in the United States and the largest employer of U.S. merchant mariners, and nearly 7,000 worldwide. Our platforms include the Combat Logistics Force, the oilers and dry cargo and ammunition ships that service our forward deployed combatants, We also operate fleet and service support vessels that you see there on the lower left, tugs and salvage ships, the hospital ships, USNS Comfort and USNS Mercy, expeditionary staging bases, expeditionary fast transport ships, and submarine tenders. Our special mission ships are responsible for ocean survey and oceanographic research and navigation testing to support a variety of customers across the DoD. Our pre-positioning ships, I mentioned them previously, keep the Marine Corps, the Army, and the Air Force supplies at sea, forward deployed, ready to be offloaded when needed in just a matter of days. And these ships return to the United States every 3 years to offload gear, rotate the equipment stocks, and conduct ship maintenance. And of course, the importance of our Sealift cannot be, our Sealift force cannot be overstated. We've talked about this already a lot today. In time of war, 90% of our nation's decisive force will travel by the 15 surge Sealift ships of MSC and the 46 Ready Reserve Fleet ships that belong to Administrator Busby, and along with all of our partners in the commercial industry that are part of the Visa MSP program. And I'd be remiss if I didn't express our appreciation for all the great support they get in lay berths across the globe. Tacoma, San Francisco, Alameda, Long Beach, San Diego, Beaumont, New Orleans, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Newport News, Portsmouth, Norfolk, and Charleston. I know we saw the map up there before, but truly we get some great support out of every one of those ports. And upon activation, when we go, and all these ships will come under the operational control of Admiral Mewbourne and MSC, we get equally good support at the various ports of embarkation like Blount Island, the military ocean terminals, and many other ports where we marry up with Army and Marine Corps equipment to carry them forward into conflict. So we're proud, I'm obviously proud, and we're proud at MSC of this deep and wide portfolio of capital assets for our nation. 45 different classes of ships, all with tremendous capability. But of course, a common denominator for all of those ships, whatever their class, whatever their function, each of them rely on the port and pier infrastructure and transport nodes, both government and commercial owned, to enable their readiness for missions at sea. So every day we take this force to sea, of course, requires the choreography of a lot of folks here that support us ashore and in the ports. And it's this effective and efficient logistics ecosystem that is as much of a readiness imperative for our military forces preparing to deploy as any exercise or any operation we conduct underway. And so while we have tremendous capacity and capability in our naval bases and yards, we can't succeed in our mission without the support of all the partners here. MARAD, SDDC, Coast Guard, and of course the businesses and organizations and commercial industry that make up the broader port community. We talked a little bit about the fourth component earlier today, and its potent contribution to military power, especially in the logistics supply chain. But perhaps at MSC, at least, for where we're thinking, that perhaps most important of all these contributions to our force by the fourth component is in the material readiness of our ships, spanning the full range of capabilities in ship repair. Whether it be a brief few days of repair and maintenance alongside a pier at Norfolk Naval Station, or a multi-month dry docking availability in a private yard. Today on the East Coast alone, we've got I think 8 different major maintenance availability and dry dockings. The cable repair ship USNS Zeus, and the fast transport ship City of Bismarck here in Kelowna Shipyard in Norfolk. The Sealift ship USNS Bob Hope, shown on the right side of this slide here, up at the Northeast Ship Repair Facility in Philadelphia. The fleet oiler USNS Leroy Grumman in Boston, the pre-post ship USNS Sizzler that just this past week, just this week, entered the dry dock at Bayonne Dry Dock in New Jersey, and the older USNS Laramie at Denton's down in Charleston. And similar work has taken place on the West Coast from San Diego to Seattle. So that day-to-day is a big focus for us, and it's truly appreciated the support that the port infrastructure and our industry partners do for those ships. For our part, MSC is really working hard to pursue improvements in how we quantitatively assess ship readiness and material readiness in particular, and updating our some detailed maintenance and employment models for each class of government-owned ship, investing in technology that will enable more accurate forecasting of maintenance and material requirements, and we're doing a lot of this with digital twin technology that some of you have heard about, that much in the airline industry has already been down this path for a while, and we're doing that with our regulatory compliance body, ABS. And result of all these efforts, I think we're gonna be able to better plan for repairs, certainly, but really we want to improve and accelerate that contracting process, those repair execution, to get these ships back on station, but also to help the industrial capacity prepare better for the trades and the materials and the planning that they have to do, especially those capabilities that are in high demand, but that have to be shared across a pretty broad set of clients, whether it be Coast Guard, Navy, other government agencies like NOAA, and of course the commercial side as well. Just as we've got to do this material readiness support for our ships, we've got to do it as well. We've got to assure the readiness of our people as well. And our ports, once again, are critical nodes in that endeavor. And providing, whether it's in providing safe and welcoming communities for our mariners and their families, servicing health care and quality of life needs, and perhaps most importantly, enabling shore-based training necessary for safe and effective operations at sea. This is a training that is expanding rapidly beyond the focus on the professional competencies in the traditional areas of navigation, seamanship, damage control, and engineering. We're placing a lot more emphasis now on training our mariners and outfitting them with the skills that they've got to have going into a contested environment of the future that we've talked about today. Whether it be against a kinetic threat, like a anti-ship ballistic cruise missile, or non-kinetic threats in cyber and electronic warfare, and in contested communications. All of that's is a skill set that we've had to revive. We've lost a bit of that since the Cold War days, and we're rapidly injecting it back in. And to meet the demand there, we've established some new advanced operations, basic and advanced operations courses that focus on operating ships in a contested environment and improving our mariners' tactical knowledge. And the picture you see there on the left-hand side is of our new Mariner Training Center of Excellence up here at Fort Eustis, where we moved out of an obsolete facility up in Earl, and have now taken advantage of some really premier classroom space and laboratories and simulators in partnership with the Army. We're also looking for opportunities to kind of stay ahead of the game in terms of innovation and concepts that are trying to get ahead of those challenges and those threats, especially in some work that we're doing in fleet experimentation, and trying to pump some of those lessons that we're learning back into the fleet fast. In one example here, you'll see our experimentation with offshore support vessels, the OSVs that have proven to be so far a pretty good plug into our logistics network, and they're very versatile. And many of you know them well, and we're looking at how they might assist in rearming and refueling of our ships at sea, or serve as a connector, a logistics connector between the port node and those many of our vessels at sea. And I think we've only just begun to kind of scratch the surface on how these vessels and how they may be tied into the port infrastructure to better support our operations. SDDC has for a long time now been pulling port operations into their war games, and you know, that needs to be a priority as well for the Navy in our fleet exercises and our war games, and we're getting at that now as well. In the past, we've too often assumed the perfect logistics perfect logistics in a war fight and a seamless supply chain, and we had the luxury to do so in a post-Cold War era where we saw guaranteed FedEx shipments, and really aside from a brief spike in piracy, we really didn't have much to worry about in terms of a threat to maritime logistics either. We can't do that anymore. Neither can we assume routine port operations during a conflict, as we've talked a little bit earlier today. So I came here with a task from Admiral Brown to identify some challenges, and so maybe this is a good recap for the day, because it's all going to be you're going to hear a lot of things that we've all talked through. So maybe we can just tape this, and then we can go on and solve them all. But where do we need to share information? Where do we need whether to be to propagate best practices or to really expand and diversify those that are thinking, that the subject matter experts that can bring some new thinking to some of the most challenging problems and help us to better prepare for, as General Broadmeadow mentioned earlier today, America's worst day. And so today it was good to see, and I shouldn't be surprised that many of the current concerns that Admiral Mewborn and myself and others on the staff at MSC have been thinking about are already on the minds of many here, and quite frankly are further along than I was aware of as a kind of a newcomer to the NDTA game. Just to summarize, whether it's building a resilient supply chain, a viable and efficient port infrastructure, accessibility, varying our accessibility to transshipment nodes and routes, sufficiency in material handling gear. These are all things that are coming up in our wargaming and our thinking at the headquarters. And so all the things that we were talking about resonate here. Resilient and adaptive cyber networks, as well as resilient OT, right? Operational technology that run our ships as well as our ports. Unless you're, I guess, in Alaska with some ancient equipment. What alternative locations and infrastructure should we be pursuing for ship repair, loading, or laborers? Especially as we think about dynamic force employment for the Navy and for all the Joint Force. Do we have the people and the skills available? And more importantly, a human capital development strategy that would ensure the ability to rapidly build skills into the workforce and scale operations up when we have to go to war. Do our largest surge vessels have the access to needed ports, or do we have to take some type of mitigations to accommodate vessel length and draft? So we're looking at all those to improve our operational flexibility, and we just heard about security too. Of course, security and force protection is constantly on our mind as well. So at MSC, we share these challenges that have been talked about all day here, and we're looking forward to continuing to work through them with you. Thanks for your partnership, for helping support our ships and everything you're doing every day to support our sailors and our mariners at sea. And with that,
Steve, can I ask you a question?
absolutely.
What kind of work have you guys done with regard to secure communications and you've mentioned the port folks to hear that? Is it something that they should consider adopting? Because you've done a lot of work in the contested environment.
Yeah, so the ships that we have operating with our Navy combatants every day, our Sealift ships, our Combat Logistics Force, they've been well taken care of for a long time. They are very well integrated and interoperable with the rest of the Navy. But it's all of these special mission ships, and especially on the Sealift side, where that's not been the case. It might be a telephone, a POTS line. That might be it. And so what we've done is we put together a pretty holistic plan to get it incrementally, but thankfully our OpNav resource sponsor, our Navy resource sponsors, have seen to it in this coming budget cycle to really plus up the dollars for contested environment C4I capabilities to outfit those ships with secure comms, secure networks, CIPRA capability. Some of those, the hardening, cyber hardening things that we've gone down the path on that quite frankly, the Sealift fleet and MSC were left outside of. So there's a pretty thorough campaign there and dollars behind it to get at that. It'll take us. We've already, gotten a lot of our fleet satisfied here, but there's still a lot more to do, and it'll take some more dollars to get that done, and it's going to stretch out to probably about a 2023, 2024 timeframe. But it's about how do we keep ourselves connected to the joint force. But I think it's also going to be how do we think through this in the future as we bring that extra communication, those extra security in our communications to our industrial partners and our port partners too. I think that's something that's got to be thought through. So barring a rush to cocktail hour, I think we've still got room for a couple questions. No? Everybody wants to get it.
Well, thanks for the list.
Oh, hi.
Dr. Bush brought you a shirt. I'm checking the size because you might want to give it to your daughter.
Yeah, that might be too small for me.
Okay.
Thanks.